Roll call, please.
Director Kelker?
Here.
Commissioner Kaskowski?
Here.
Commissioner Rourke?
Here.
Commissioner Holler?
Here.
Chairman Gentry?
Here.
Mayor Kearns?
Here.
Councilman Panzera is excused. Director Bashane?
Here.
And City Attorney Kazan is excused.
Thanks, Megan.
Hmm?
The minutes from the last meeting are still in draft, so we will review those for the prior to next meeting. So for anyone in the audience who may be speaking tonight, can you please stand and raise your right hand? Repeat after me. I swear to tell the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
That's all good. Thank you, guys. Any additions or changes to the agenda?
None that I'm aware of.
All right, let's get right into it. PC case number 2-2022, Lawbird LLC, 1306 Grandview Avenue. Who will be presenting on behalf of them? Step up to the podium, please. Applicant seeking approval and variances related to signage. Go ahead.
Sure. Do you just want me to describe what?
Yep.
Okay, cool. I was told that the minimum allotted
Just
signage
as
was
a point of order, I'm sorry. Just go ahead and state your name and address.
Okay. My name's Luke Pierce, and the business address, 1306 Grandview Avenue. I'm just looking to enlarge the logo on our awning slightly more than the 6 square feet that's allowed.
Okay. Tell us about the business, why you got the podium.
Sure, yeah. So my wife and I opened our bar in the Brewery District about 4 months before COVID. And once the shutdown hit, we were shut down for a couple months. We then turned that bar into kind of a natural wine and cocktail grab and go once they legalized cocktails to go. And we did that for almost a year, slightly over a year, and we had a lot of fun doing it. We did delivery during that time as well, and we kept coming over to this area. And so when the bar got back to being the bar, back to normal, last May, we decided we wanted to try to make that pandemic pivot kind of a permanent thing. And since we kept coming over here in kind of the Upper Arlington, Grandview area, we found this spot because the Smithery was looking to move elsewhere, and it just seemed perfect. So that's kind of, this is the permanent version of our pandemic pivot kind of thing.
All right, a positive story actually, so that's good.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Well, thank you. Liz, you want to go to the
Certainly, happy to. So signs in Grandview Avenue, on Grandview Avenue rather, fall into the Grandview Avenue overlay district. So there was just a little bit of additional guidance there, really 4 pieces of either code or guidelines that govern signage. One would be the overlay district standards, one is the basic sign standards, one is the development standards and guidelines within the zoning code, and then also, of course, the design guidelines themselves. So I want to jump to the second page. This is a new awning. Awning's not up yet, right?
There used to be a 3-piece awning there, and this is just going to be a straight awning.
Not replacement yet. So the photos page kind of shows where it's located there in the Smithery. Everybody probably knows that there already. I've included pictures of the existing signage and canopies along there just to give you a flavor. There's different colors and shapes of canopies. The text is consistently white, which is one of the considerations for discussion this evening. But the colors and shapes certainly vary, and the signage varies as well. On the considerations page, very specifically, signage on an awning is called out to be a maximum of 1 inch, very small, 1 foot tall, and a maximum of 6 square feet total, which essentially speaks to the fact that it originally, you know, really looking at putting that signage on the vertical banner, vertical side of an awning. The guidelines recommend a minimalist approach in general to signage in Grandview Heights overall, actually, not only here. Content limited to basic names and graphics and sign colors should be subtle and compatible with the architecture. The overlay district standards provide some, you know, generic guidance, unique and attractive, designed to contribute to character, vitality, and visual appeal of the public realm. Also, again, should be complementary with the architecture of the buildings. And then the development standards and design guidelines relating to signage also state signage should be discreet and minimal, colors should be subdued, and where appropriate, the architectural character of the sign should be consistent with that of the building. Generally, all of the various codes and guidelines and all of that are consistent. And in terms of considerations, as I mentioned, I think the one that I originally originated from putting it on a vertical face and what would make sense in that regard. This particular subset of retail spaces along this part of Grandview Avenue, as I mentioned earlier, visibility is a little bit limited because they do have mature trees there, which is nice. They're set back from the street, which is also nice because there's that public amenities on in the front. All of that serves to make their signage a little bit less visible than some of the other signage. So that's something to keep in mind in terms of the request here. The maximum square footage that you could, get with the requirements stated as 6 square feet is substantially less, of course, than what's requested at 21.8 square feet. But overall, I would say that it's in keeping with the scale of the building, and the awning is not overwhelming at all. The visibility may provide some consideration for the size variance request. The color, I think, is something that you might want to discuss. And let's see, otherwise, I think generally we are supportive, staff is supportive of the application. Appreciate the applicant talking to us beforehand and working with us. The recommendations are approval, generally with the overlay district signage review, and then approval with any conditions under the signage ordinance, with any conditions the commission might like to request. Happy to answer any questions.
Francis, do you have any questions or comments?
So I see the samples that you, like Spencer Research and the Jim's Tailoring, but we voted on the Lions Club. That's not like that. There's their logo with a cub, and I think it's kind of similar to that. It's just their logo is not lettering on that 1 foot.
They don't have they do have a canopy, but they've
That's
got
what we voted
they've got a
on.
frame, a different condition there. They're a different collection of signs that occur on that end of the avenue. So we're trying to look at the architecture in the proximity of the request as
But it
well
is an
as
awning.
overall.
It's an awning, because I remember
There-
they have different colors.
Yeah,
and-
there is an awning.
So,
You don't only have to have an awning for signage. You're permitted in the area to have a wall sign, various different kinds of signs. If you ask for a wall sign, it can be up to 40 square feet.
right.
So there are different options for how you do signage in the avenue, the marquee at the theater. If you want to do signage on an awning, then these are the guidelines. Does that make sense?
If I may, the
Yeah.
cub shrub is a vertical sign that's attached to the structure, just like a wall
So
sign.
it's not down.
It's not on the awning. Yeah.
Alright. I mean, I understand the keeping the consistency throughout, but I have to say, I mean, I look at this and it doesn't offend me. It's just, this isn't an awning. If it was a sign sticking out, then maybe, but in the colors, I think black and like a cream color, I don't know exactly what it is. I don't have a big issue with it, but I'm just curious what everyone else has to say.
Mark?
Just have a couple questions for Liz, probably, and also for you. So is it just the awning sign, or is it also the sign on the door too? In the photograph, there's another sign there.
This is about the awning, not the window decal. They can be 25% of the glass.
Okay, so
So
there's-
I believe he's fine with that.
All right, and then my question to you, is there a preference for the tan versus a white, or is there no preference, that it was just sort of the first thing you picked? Or
That's
is
just
it
with-
part of your, you know, who you are?
Yeah, it's part of our brand colors.
Your brand color.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's important. You
Yeah.
have a brand color that's, especially since it's neutral, I don't have any objection to that being a neutral brand color. The only other thing is you've chosen to put it on the slope surface versus on the front because of size. But I guess how big is it actually that we're measuring to? Because, you know, that kind of looks flat here, but the surface is actually sloping back. If you're on the street, you know, it's gonna potentially shorten, or in actuality, it's stretched long. You know, the letters are actually kind of wonky so that when you see them from the street, they look normal. Does that kind of make sense? You know, if you look at something that's written from my finger to finger, and that's the right scale, and you look at it like this, it looks foreshortened.
Sure.
And it doesn't look right anymore. So are you trying to say this looks right, so when you look at it square, it looks stretched? So that's my only, I guess, question with it being on top. So what proportions are we looking at? You know, if this is your logo brand, that's the right scale. When it's like this, it's going to maybe look weird.
Well, I guess I would say that that's actually not probably a planning commission concern.
Okay.
The scale of it is a concern, and that's measured just flat in the rectangular box that is created by outlining the signage, so that's the size variance that's requested.
Okay. I was just thinking if that's what it is, but it lays flat like that, then it's gonna look a little foreshortened, and will that be acceptable to you?
I think so.
Okay. So that's my only two things, questions asked.
I guess I don't really have a question because you kind of answered, it's part of your brand standards, the DB color. I think it's neutral, I'm in favor of that and kind of the general aesthetic. And I think it's extremely important for businesses to be able to have their own identity. And we, as a commission, should just try and help maintain some sort of high level of standard, and I think this accomplishes that, so I have no objections.
I echo Kim's comments. I like it. Keeping with the brand is the best way to go. Yeah, I think it fits in.
Can I add something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just plain devil's advocate. How hard or how upset would you be if we say, no, let's continue and put something on the, 1 foot vertical? Is that?
So I don't actually know off the top of my head how big the skirt is on the vertical right there.
So you might not have the foot in that.
It's like 9.5 inches.
Yeah, and I think it would just be probably a large cost to me to figure out a different avenue for the signage in general, because I would probably have to figure out some sort of other option just to get, we've struggled recently because I think we don't have enough brand presence on the street. If you really don't know we're there unless
I
you're
gotta
there,
say,
so-
I know a lot of folks that know you from your other location,
Yeah.
and they're like, there's a Lauber in
Yeah.
Grandview, and it was like, yeah, I've been there for a while
Yeah.
now, so I understand that too.
Yeah, so that just might set us back quite a bit if we had to just go with the vertical.
Mayor?
Just curious where the name comes from.
It's a deep, dark secret.
Oh,
Real time.
Okay, well,
My
no,
wife will tell the exact same answer too.
welcome in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
It sounds like she might not be for this now.
More for it.
I think it's interesting all your deliveries are coming to Grandview. I don't know if that's a sign of a happy community or a sign of a fun community.
Real fun. I can tell you.
Is there anyone in the audience that has any questions or comments of the applicant? All right, hearing none, is there a motion? Commission
I move to accept the sign as presented, with the colors and size, locations as indicated.
I second.
Commissioner Kaszewski,
Yes.
Commissioner Rourke,
Yes.
Commissioner Holland,
Yes.
Chairman Gentry.
Yes. You're all good. Thank you for your investment here.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to PC case number 3-2022, 1000 Maryland Avenue, Summit Chase condominiums.
Jane, I have to recuse myself.
Suzanne Brooks is the applicant or president.
He's back there. I'm Tim Mel, president of HOA Project Management Resources, representing Summit Chase at 1000 Irwin Avenue.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for allowing us to come. Summit Chase still has the same electrical system it had when it was built in 1964, 1965. It's seen its day. We are working on a project now to replace not only the switchgear that serves the entire building, but as part of the assessment of the system, AEP came and reviewed the transformers. Those are also original to the building. So we are running on a lot of good thoughts and prayers keeping the power on at Summit Chase. Part of the overall site plan, do you have the other
Yes, ma'am.
picture? When we first started this project for certain, last July, we got a report from our consulting engineer that they thought the transformer should be placed down much closer, just outside the right-of-way of Goodale Avenue, Goodale Boulevard. And that was based on their understanding of some of AEP's policies and procedures. Since that time, we've had the opportunity to hire a contractor as well as meetings with AEP. We didn't really want the transformers down that close to Goodale Avenue, even with screening or something of that sort. There's also always the fear of somebody losing control and taking out the transformers. And we kind of destroy that park-like setting we've got going on with the trees and McKinley Park directly across the street. So after several meetings with AEP and our contractor, we were able to move the transformers up right outside the building on what is now our shuffleboard court near the pool. So Megan, if we go to that first slide there. So this is kind of a blow up of the area. These are approximate 2 pads to set the transformers on. These are going to be big Grandview Yard kind of transformers to serve that building, one for 480, one for 208 volts. We put them in this area. The power runs north is this way. The power runs up from Goodale Avenue to feed those, then they will be fed into the building to replace the system that's in there. As part of the project, we would relocate the pool fence that we just put up last fall. But the goal is to move the transformers outside the fenced area so that if there is an outage, AEP needs to get in there. You don't have to go hunting for someone with a key. And we also did not want to put in a big vehicle gate to allow them in. So this way we can keep a small person gate to go in and out of the pool area in the event of emergency, but it gets rid of that large vehicle gate that would be needed. So a little bit of fence realignment to keep all of that outside of the pool area, and that would tie back into the building up here. The site is hard to see from Goodale, and I think it's invisible from Erland probably. We would put some screening vegetation along the south side of them. It would be evergreens, arbor. The bushy bushes, evergreens. We put those along to provide some screening on that, and we will probably also work with the landscape committee to put some screening around the transformers themselves, just so that people sitting at the pool don't have to stare at the big green boxes. So that was the site review that we're going to ask for consideration on. Want to see if there were any comments, questions, and that's our plan.
Appreciate it. Liz?
Yes, thank you. applicant very well describes the situation we had met early on and talked about the, possibility of putting something down near Good Ale, and everybody was like, nobody wants that, so appreciate you working with AEP to get them situated up close to the building.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot one element. AEP will have to set a new pole on Goodale to provide this service. The existing pole already has lots of stuff running down it, they just don't have room for it. So, and we did meet with the city engineer last week, he has no objections to that pole. AEP will get all the proper right-of-way permits and that sort of stuff required. So I'm sorry for interrupting, I wanted to left that one out.
No problem. So, as the applicant mentioned, the board considered something similar last year in terms of the fence location and the front yard, backyard. The site is complicated when considering what those yards are, because what its front yard is not necessarily the community front yard. Generally speaking, obviously we want to support the applicant in replacing these critical life safety systems. Appreciate that you're taking that expense to do that. As far as the location, as far as from our conversations, my understanding, this is kind of best and only in many ways because of the location of switchgear inside the building. Generally speaking, I think it's difficult to see. It's up on a ridge. The screening will hide it. They're not the size of the generator. They're much smaller. So they'll be able to be screened. And all those things taken into account. We would recommend approval on the major site plan, and in terms of the fence regulations, I would say because of, it's sort of behind the transformer, so once you screen the transformers, you're effectively screening the fence, so I don't think that we would ask for screening per se for the fence as we had last year because of that. Happy to answer any questions.
Tim?
I think she just answered my last thing, because I was on the commission when this went through for the fence, and I've driven by it, and it doesn't seem to really screen too much. And noting the point that she just mentioned, landscaping kind of in the site topography probably doesn't really matter. And so if we're just relocating a fence that's relatively new, in good condition, I think that's fine. I don't really have any other questions related to this. It does seem like a very practical location. I would hate for it to be closer to the main street, and I'm glad that you worked with AEP to get it closer to the road.
Yeah, no comments either, because you need power, right?
It's useful, yeah.
No, I, no comments.
Yeah, it seems like you do things that would be concerning and check those boxes ahead of time, so I appreciate it. Mayor?
I don't have any comments. Thanks for your conscientiousness.
Thank you.
Questions or comments from anyone in the audience? Ms. Brooks?
We're good.
All right.
If you don't have any questions, we appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Actually, I have a question for Tim.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were talking about filling in the vault. Is that happening?
Yeah. We're still working on that.
Okay.
I'm locating an architect who can help me out with those
I
plans.
was just
But
wondering, because I saw.
if that takes place, we're going to get a permit on that, absolutely.
Yeah, I saw drawings for the electric.
And you have the plans for the electric system rehab
Right.
for the building review as well. So that's working its way through.
Yeah, but I'd love to see the vault because the new lines go in that vault.
Okay, well,
Right.
we can talk.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve PC case 03-2022, approval of major site and the relocation of the fence. Is that right? That's what it says.
Yeah. Just say it as presented. Is there a second?
I just wondered if we included the screening for the evergreens and whatever was mentioned. So as presented includes that. I second it.
Okay, it's approval of the major site, with the provision that evergreen vegetation screening on the south south side of the proposed transformers are added, and the fence approval and relocation. That's it.
The second.
Commissioner Wark,
Yes.
Commissioner Kachasowski,
Yes.
Chairman Gentry.
Yes.
Approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
I don't worry with you.
We need them.
You're on.
They're all good. It's all right. I thought you'd go outside on the night like tonight. All right, on the PC case number 4/2022, address is 939 Goodale Boulevard. The owner is IEW Local Union 683. And we're doing a major site plan review and a variance request related to parking. Go ahead and state your name and address and take it away.
I'm Rick Sticker with RES Civil Engineering, Post Office Box 114, Amlin, Ohio, 43002, and I have not been sworn in.
Oh, you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You're in.
All right. As you can tell from the survey, there is quite a large parking lot, 180 spaces, and there's a in and out access is along the east side. They also have a cross-access easement to go around the building and access the light. That's where Northwest Boulevard meets Grandview, Goodale Boulevard. That has been constructed recently is a new Swan Street that comes right to our property, right in the back. Very nice alignment to the back of the property. We would like to access that, and we have a curb cut application in. To do that, we need to re-strike the parking lot. So there was a variance granted in 2018 that allowed for us to have 183 spaces. With our restriping plan, as you can tell, with just the driveway there, we kind of lose a couple spaces, and that's what it ends up being, that we lose 2 spaces in the restriping to put that access right there. So the request today is to reduce the current parking allowed at 183 down to 181.
Okay, thank you. Liz?
All right, so this change will actually kind of clean up some emerging developing changes over many years down in that area. When the original new infrastructure for Grandview Yard Phase 1 went in and Bobcat Avenue went in, there was a change to how the traffic needed to operate there. So historically, they've been using that access drive on the east side, both in and out. And once there was a turn onto Bobcat, the striping changed to not have a center turn lane there. So technically, they lost that ability to access that drive, although we did have our traffic engineer look at traffic reports, and there hasn't been any problems from it. They didn't actually require a prohibition on left turns there from an accident perspective. But from a striping perspective, the right in, right out change is preferred by the city and would be consistent with the paving that's there now. And the applicant's willing to give up that left turn access coming essentially from downtown by being able to have wayfinding for folks to proceed down the extension of Bobcat south of Goodale, turn right on what is now Bowman Way officially. That was passed in council on Monday. And then access their lot from the back that way. Commissioner Hollern had asked earlier whether indicating the private parking lot extending all the way down to the south, but that private plan is incorrect. The plan that's in the packet is correct. The right of way doesn't extend over there. And someday, I understand that if there were to be redevelopment of these parcels, optimally, Bowman Way would continue over to Northwest Boulevard to make a connection there, but that's not anything that needs to happen now. It can happen as part of a redevelopment if that were to happen at some point in the future. So generally speaking, the connection cleans up this traffic issue, facilitates better circulation for the applicant and for IBEW electrical union members who come there for training. And so, which kind of all come at once, right? So it's also important to have good traffic access in and out. So for all those reasons, we would support the application. Just one, I think, major important point with it is that there was and remains a cross-access easement, shared parking agreements down there. Those need to be updated. I would ask tonight that the commission review the connection in terms of layout and theory, if you will, and that the applicant will need to follow up with those revised legal documents referencing the new plan and file with all the appropriate agencies and provide those to Director Beauchene for review by our city attorney before the final CFO, certificate of occupancy, would be issued for the permit to close out the building permit. Building permits required because there's ADA requirements and layout requirements, access lane widths and those kinds of things. So there will be a building permit pulled, and that process will allow for a trigger to receive that updated easement documentation. So with that, we would recommend approval of the major site plan of the reduction in the number of parking spaces from the prior variance and conditional approval essentially on the shared parking stipulated on provision of that updated access easement legal document. Happy to answer any questions. I just want to say I appreciate the applicant and the owners and business folks down there. Part of this whole thing we've been talking about for quite some time, and ultimately I think it has worked out fairly easily, if I may say that. I will add one other thing that I noticed today. I drove down there and was looking at the driveway, the right in, right out proposed driveway. It's fairly wide. It might be helpful in terms of wayfinding to have a straight run down there with some cross diagonal or something to indicate the lane visually. It has a yellow line down the middle of it now, kind of indicating two directional traffic, and it might help just with changing that operation officially. There'll be new signage that says do not enter, but, and we're working with the city's contractor for the south of Goodale infrastructure work to execute the curb cut and some wayfinding signage and directional signage and road control signage with both the city engineer as well as the engineer for the south of Goodale to dot all those I's and cross those T's. But again, the only thing I really noticed today is it might be helpful from a wayfinding perspective to indicate more visually on the pavement on that drive that it's a single lane now. So we just offer that for discussion.
Thanks, Liz. Mark?
Question again first for Liz, and you can jump into which of the entrance drives off of Goodale is right in, right out, just to clarify. Is it the one that's east or the west one?
East.
Okay, so it's the one across from Bob versus, I'm sorry, the one across from
Nearer to Bobcat.
near Bobcat. Yeah, I drive, I'm actually in the building right across from you, basically above Jason's old deli location. So I often, when I'm turning on Bobcat to park, and I have cars coming at me, and they're wanting to pull near driveway in the morning at 7, and they stack up because it looks like they're, it's about one of the times they come in. So it isn't a major problem, but, it's like, what do I do? This car has to, stay not in my lane, but, work around me, but potentially can stop traffic behind it there. So I think that's a great idea. I really appreciate you tapping into Swan, taking advantage of that. I think it helped circulation and traffic flow. So I just commend you for doing that and jumping on that to help out the streets and congestion and
These guys.
everything. Well, it's good, because I think it's recognizes that, you know, unfortunately, those two streets have come right into your business at awkward spots, and, you know, that's not your fault. It's how development happened across the street from you, and you're trying to improve it, so appreciate that. So, just observations and thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So it says the variance note, 183 total spaces proposed. What's required? So how short are you on spaces?
That is an interesting question. I had asked you to calculate, we were looking at the variance that had been granted before, essentially, the major thing, because that was the variance that was approved when Charlie, you've got the memory better than I do on this, when there was a prior change in use perhaps, or restriping
The
or before.
approval was for 185 in the documents for the,
And that was already a variance.
yes.
So if we were to calculate,
I think he wants to go to 183, but for a different year.
The applicant does have some calculation information on the letter that came along with it. It's in the middle paragraph there. Calculation, I have to add these up on the spelling, I get it wrong.
On the Ford Associates letter of October 3rd, they figured they had a total of 185 parking spots available, and their parking count was 221. So that's their variance to, I believe that's what was passed, it was 185, but I heard a different number, so I don't know.
numbers everywhere, but, I guess I just have a suggestion, and it's just a suggestion that could help add a little bit more parking. So in the writing right out, like you said, that is a pretty wide entrance. I think it's 25 by looking at the dimension here. I wonder if we could make it a one-way. Maybe you can add some parallel parking in there, and it just probably runs a little bit smoother, and maybe these can be angled a little bit. Just a suggestion, if you need the parking, make this one way. I would suggest maybe in, and then they can just still come back and go back out through the signal. Again, it's just a suggestion. I'm fine with approving what you have. I appreciate, like you said, this is gonna flow much better, so if you need a spot, great, but I think we could, if you need more, you can think about that.
All right.
So curious, if someone's coming from the east, westbound, and wants to come in, so they're gonna have to make a left, there's not a protected or additional turn lane there. Was there a little parking problem? At the entrance, at the main entrance, that it's the full entrance on the west side?
On Goodale?
Yes.
My condition is not changing, it is not optimal, but it's not changing.
Is there an issue, I mean, you have Bobcat Avenue, can you not, I hate to do this to you, but this is only an out, and everyone comes from Bobcat or something, it's that,
That would,
I know I'm making it more complicated.
it would involve applicants who aren't here tonight, property owners who aren't here tonight.
Okay.
And the city did install a dedicated signal to control that parking lot ingress and egress that is adjacent to the signal for Northwest Boulevard to the west. It's right by the business there. So it has been engineered and is working. And isn't changing, so we didn't make any recommendations in that regard.
I think the users, are gonna be repeat users,
They know what
so
it is.
they're gonna figure out the best way to come and to come Bobcat or Swan, come in that turn before they get there kind of thing.
That's all I have, it's and it was more a suggestion on
Thank you.
I guess but I'm also kind of fixated on this right in, right out, because I've had similar experiences with the left turn into this east side lane. And I know sometimes we put in curbs that restrict traffic so that when you're coming from the west, it flows into the east, and when you're coming out, you have to go to the right. Are there any plans for that? Because all I heard were there were signs.
The issue is there's not enough room
Yeah.
to
Okay.
put in
The pork chop.
a pork chop.
Yeah, because we were talking
We
about how wide
discussed
it
that.
was.
Yeah, we
So,
talked about that.
okay.
That's why signage is kind of have to
No,
drive it.
And then, this is probably not related to this application, but in some ways it is. I see that we have a 15-foot easement on the back side of the parking lot that would completely wipe out a ton of these spaces. What is that for? Does anyone know?
It's a unimproved city alley, dedicated alleyway. It runs essentially from Twin Rivers, or nearly to Twin Rivers Drive, all the way over roughly to where the storage building is, sort of in the middle of Goodale.
Yeah.
It's a little awkward. However, it's conceivable that it could be useful for, in the future, if it were connected to a roadway to serve the back of buildings, if there was a redevelopment that aligned with that.
Right.
I haven't gone to look. I know that there's electric back there that utilizes that city right away.
Right.
I don't know if there's any other utilities, like, I kind of don't think so, but I know that there's electric back there.
There's the alley, you can see it, it's on the plan, it's kind of 15 feet beyond the property line, it's public. And then the 15-foot on, it's just, utilities. I think there's overhead lines in there, I think the electric comes from there. It's just,
So it's a utility easement.
it's a utility.
I have no further comments.
Yeah, when this came up, my hope was we were getting rid of that driveway altogether, that curb cut. So it sounds like maybe that was discussed or at least explored in parking configuration or adding spaces potential, but it's just not.
Wasn't the preference of the applicant wasn't supported by traffic engineering necessity after a review? So we're deferring to the applicant's
Yeah.
preference.
Okay. And then I guess for the signage, the pork chop, you can't do the pork chop. Is it like a sign in the middle of the driveway kind of thing, surrounded by reflectors? I mean, I've seen that as like is that what we're thinking?
That's what, there's not enough room for, is that what you mean, the pork chop?
Well, I mean, just a sign in
That
the
says-
middle.
I think you would put a, like a
'Cause it's-
straight sign facing that way with the left arrow with
Right.
the circle and X out, so you can't do a left turn. And
Okay.
even here, then the other way, like showing the same thing facing into the driveway
Yeah.
so that they know they can't turn left.
Yeah,
And
I've seen.
then coming out, right turn only sign,
Yeah.
And you can stripe arrows here.
Are you gonna stripe arrows or no? Kind of self-explanatory, I guess, with the sign.
do that.
You don't need it if you do one way. Well, you'll need the one way, yeah. you need the
One way, do
way.
not enter,
Okay. Well, I had to ask the question without having the opportunity, so I appreciate it. Mayor?
Thanks for working with us.
Anyone in the audience have any questions, comments? Yes, sir. Please come, state your name and address, please.
Patrick Cook, business manager, IBW 683, and trustee of Electrical Trade Center, 939 Goodale Boulevard. I'd just like to thank the city and Liz for help with this, and let the commission know that we've been longtime residents here before Bobcat was even there. So none of these issues were created by us. So I think this is a very good solution to just kind of the traffic issues we've discussed already. And I just ask for your approval. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Jim?
I'm Jimmy M. Stutz. I own property on the west of the location here at 999 Goodale. And we're also the location where the easement goes through. And we're all for this new program. It's gonna, there's a lot of traffic going through our property now, and hopefully some of it will go over to Bobcat Street. These guys are, they do a great service for the community for as far as, providing electricians to do the work that went on east. And we're the company at Ohio Power Tool that supplies the tools for them. So we work really good, and we'd love to see this get approved. So that's all I had to say this year.
Thanks, Jim. Thank you, Jim. Anyone else?
If you guys have one final question, I don't think it makes a difference in my opinion, but has anyone, do we have enough parking? Do we, in operations, like, did anyone address that?
Parking, yeah, it's worked well.
It's worked out. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they're there like in the evening, and we're there during the day, and we leave, and then we're great neighbors, so.
Thank you.
Good point. With a parking variance, I guess someone's got to ask. All right, thank you. Is there other questions or comments? Is there comments by the commission?
I guess I'll move to accept the variance and their suggested restriping plan to allow them to tie into the new street extension of Swan, labeled something else now, I didn't catch that.
Bowman Way.
Bowman Way, as planned and agreed to with the planning group.
Any consideration of the condition from the staff report? The shared parking?
Yes, that they, per the staff report, that they follow up with the shared parking approval condition, how would you state that?
The
You stated
revised shared
separately.
access easement agreement is what they need to.
Okay, you have to supply that at the same time, be part of this condition.
Thanks. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Commissioner Holler,
Yes.
Commissioner Kaszewski,
Yes.
Commissioner Rourke,
Yes.
Chairman Gentry.
Yes. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Any other communications or things coming before the commission tonight?
I'd like to invite the commissioners to the open house next Monday at 7 in Wynwood. Here.
The community meeting is next Monday at 7 o'clock at Lemon Woods. If there's any business owners in the community, there is a business roundtable on Tuesday, also at Wyman Woods at 4:30.
All right. Thank you very much. Nothing else, we're adjourned.